Hey guys, and welcome to Beating the Press podcast, your weekly podcast where we talk all things football. If that's your type of thing, why not click the subscribe button and join the 88 strong BTP army and give us a like while you're there. So today marks 1 year since George Floyd was murdered by a Minneapolis police officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck for a total of 9 minutes. George Floyd is a name that's now synonymous around the world, a name which I don't think we'll ever forget. Obviously, this incident wasn't the first example of police brutality towards people of colour, but this was a little bit different. People of all colours, background, all came together organising mass protests all across the world, America and in particular in the UK, protesting obviously against police brutality and the racism that people of colour suffer on a daily basis. Now, obviously, we're not a political podcast where we're not going to take the fight to the man or anything like that. We're just two good-looking lads and who've got 88 subscribers. But what we wanted to do today was discuss the impact that George Floyd had on the incident itself had on football, in particular the No Room for Racism campaign and kneeling before football matches. So the first thing I thought we'd jump into is kneeling a year on. Ty, I just want to ask you how you think it's gone and do you think it had the desired impact that it was meant to have?
Yeah, just before I answer that question, we normally are two looking lads, but I have got the black eye for those of you that are visually watching us and not listening to us on the podcast. So Chris did ask me, is it what happened to you? And
he didn't wear his Beating the Press podcast top, and I just thought I've had enough now. No, go ahead, sorry.
No, but seriously, what happened? On the weekend I was playing football, so obviously linked to the podcast, and I got wiped out by the keeper, but he got the free kick, and that's just keepers getting overly protected. Anyway, back to matters at hand. So this podcast has always been something we wanted to discuss because it's a subject that's close to our hearts anyway. And we spoke about the kneeling because it's had people question it. It's had people, professional footballers, professional clubs making decisions not to kneel. And the impact of it, has it had the desired impact? I think when it first started, absolutely. It just, everyone was on board. I think what happened with, last year, we've got to take into consideration the year we've been through. So obviously, we're going to remember it as COVID. But the question I'd probably pose to everyone is, do people remember last year as the COVID year or the George Floyd Black Lives Matter year? Because I think they're both absolutely huge events. And I was thinking about this. So, the whole game of football was played in front of no fans, and then the Black Lives Matter. It almost felt like the players and clubs had something to hang on to and something to fight against. You've got no fans in front of you, you needed something else. And I just felt there was obviously a lot of powerful black players were making a real point of it as well. The first couple of months, absolutely, I think it was powerful, but then it slowly but surely sort of the power and the effect of it diluted away. And I want to explain how I sort of thought and felt when George Floyd first got murdered. And I mentioned this quite a bit at the time. And I don't know if you felt the same thing. I felt the momentum behind the whole anti-racism campaign. I'd never known it as powerful in my lifetime. The amount of people that were sort of getting on board, understanding, people of all colour were explaining the racism that they'd suffered, those microaggressions, every little thing, those stereotypical comments, those flyaway little under the sort of table remarks, those sort of things, and everything, everyone was just sort of stepping up. And you felt there was more understanding coming from white people because they were really listening now. There was obviously a huge, it was almost like, even though America had like Trump as president, it almost felt like he was powerful enough to stop it because those marches were still going. And, we obviously know Trump's pretty right wing. And even it came through in England and the UK and then New Zealand and like all over the world. The momentum was so big. And I just felt this is the moment that everything's going to change. Now, fast forward to where we are a year. If you ask me, has it changed as much as I thought it would or hoped it would? The answer is no. I don't think it's done enough. And the reason why I say that is yes, people are more understanding, but those people that are racist will always be racist. They're the ones that saying, we don't kneel for Black lives, we only kneel for, fallen soldiers. There'll always be an argument against, just to fight anything that will stop that anti-racist conversation or agenda. They will use anything to push against it. Yet if you ask them, they wouldn't ever worry about those fallen soldiers in normal times, but just because there's something else there again for them to fight against. The other thing, you found I found quite a few of my friends, I'd say friends, posting stuff on social media, sort of fighting against Black Lives Matter and saying it's a political movement, anything just to dampen and stop the momentum moving forward. It's basically people showing the true colours. So that was the other benefit. You found out who people really were. And just one last thing, because I know you want to come in as well. The reason why I don't think it's made as much impact as it should have done is because of the social media companies not taking a step against the online racist abuse. We're obviously, it's relevant now, and there was obviously the recent media blackout from all football clubs and governing bodies and stuff. And that's still about, until they really care about it, they'll take, if someone's illegally uploaded a Premier League goal, they'll take it down in 20 seconds. Me and you've had it when we're trying to edit stuff for you and put music on, and it just gets rejected straight away by YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So, there's got to be some real heartfelt desire. And ultimately, is it people in power? I'll let you speak next. I've probably gone off.
No, you were bang on. Obviously, you talked there about social media and the social media giants. This was like a perfect opportunity for them to, take the bull by the horns and effectively lead the way for everybody. Obviously, they're the biggest companies in the world: Facebook, Twitter. They should have taken. They should have taken the example and just eradicated it, like you say, music straight away. They'll take it down, but it should be pretty easy just to put some kind of a filter in there just for any kind of racist comments or anything like that. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by like a lot of people on my social feeds over the last 12 months, particularly when it first started. Obviously, when something first happens, everybody's outraged and. Again, pleasantly surprised by the reaction by it. But you do always have those people, like you say, that are never, ever going to change their mind. And, going back to what the Premier League done, I think it was just when the season began again, I think they had Black Lives Matter on the shirts. And people were like, Black Lives Matter, it's a terrorist organization. I don't agree with it. It's political. Well, no, it's never really been about a political movement. You all know what it's really about. It's about the fact that people, injustices against people of color, and no one really can deny that that's happened throughout history. But it got changed. Premier League changed it just as though the season started. I think it was when the season actually started. They changed it over for, they changed the name to No Room for Racism. So that kind of appeased a lot of the arguments. It's no longer Black Lives Matter. You can't say it's long that, but people still continually have a problem with the kneeling. And I understand if the problem is due to the fact that the message is being diluted, because that shows that you're caring about the actual message itself. But I don't think that is the case. The reason I just wanted to come back to, I'm just going to give you my answer first. In that, should we stop the kneeling? And I've went back and forward on this, and I, like you, I thought that the message was being diluted. If you start to do something, it just becomes something that you just do before kickoff, and it's pretty irrelevant. But then I'd say around about 3-4 weeks ago, my little nephew, I think he's 4 or 5 year old, and we were watching a football clip, and he just jumped in the middle of it, and he just looked at it, and he's saying to me, why are the people sitting down? Like, it was a match just before it was about to start. He said, why are the people sitting down? And I was like, well, like, obviously they weren't sitting down, they were kneeling down. They were taking a knee. And I couldn't explain to him. I'm not going to explain to a 4 or 5 year old, because it's just going to go over their head about, racism, why they need to do about it. But it just made me think about, let's say, a 7, 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, or someone that's going to ask their dad, what's this about? And then if it's just one kid, if it's a number of kids that actually get the message that these things do occur and this is the right way to behave and this was the wrong way to behave, then I think it's worth keeping hold of it, regardless of whether the message is diluted. If someone asks the question, there's an answer to it.
Just to comment on that, and you're absolutely right. And Jazz, I've got a daughter, Jasmine. She's 8 years old, and she asked the exact question. Do you know why they, what are they doing? Why they're kneeling? So I explained to her. I made a conscious decision that when it was all, if she ever asks me, I'm not going to sort of put it on her when she's 7 and 8. Do you know what I mean? If she asks me the question, I'll tell her. So I explained to her what it was and the reason why it was, and different peoples of color, people are just treated differently just because of the way they look, of the skin, the color of their skin. So she's always asked me, why do people have different skin? It's just how much sun you get. That's effectively it. It's not rocket
easy
science.
Answer.
Yeah. That's it. You don't have to worry about, don't make it better or worse. I think it's just, that's it. But people will always not mean people. Obviously, I've got a talking 8-year-olds language. I say mean people.
Yeah.
mean, and so that's a really good point, because even though we probably we spend a lot of time on social media as the rest of the world does, and you sometimes think, too many people just don't value what it means anymore. And obviously, for an 8-year-old person, a kid to watch the football and ask what's happening, she knows about that, and that'll stay with her. Do you know what I mean? They're like sponges, those kids. Everything you tell them, they'll remember it. But she knows that now. And if she asks it if she speaks to a friend, and she'll hopefully tell her. Do you know what I mean? So now it's just being visible and people understanding why it's there. Now, the bit about, I don't like talking about these people who are always sort of anti-Black Lives Matter, they'll always make an argument the other case. But
yeah,
I just think the moment Les Ferdinand, I don't know if you remember, Les Ferdinand and QPR said, we are not going to do it now because it feels like it's dilute. Those people had something to cling on to then. Do you know what I mean? They said, well, a black guy said it, now we can say it as well. Do you know what I mean?
Will Saha as well when he came on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there had to be a more united decision around it for one club to just come off. I know Les Ferdinand's a director at QPR, and he's, there was talk of him going for the FA chairmanship role. But I think for him to step out and do that, whether he believed in it, I think he should have had spoke to more, like all the other sort of more popular sort of black players and seeing what they thought. And I just felt him doing that didn't really help where they wanted to go and sort of move on from that. So just sort of looking back, I just think that there could have been better communication between sort of black players and players of colour and what they really wanted to do. Just one final bit as well, that when sort of pre-lockdown as well, when they just before Christmas, when they let some fans in, there were games where they were getting booed when they went down for a knee. You could hear the odd fans. Even recently, I think it was I don't know if it was the Chelsea game.
Yeah, it was Chelsea.
Where you could hear the odd fan booing. So when it's complete silence and everyone's taking the knee, and you can hear the boos, that you can't drown them out unless everyone claps. But then again, that defeats the purpose. And I just think moving forward, when stadiums are full, what's it going to look like? Are we just going to accept fans booing? Are we going to? What's the answer? Do you know what I mean? And I just think there's obviously going to be all those. There's nothing set in, because booing people taking the knee isn't racist, but we all know exactly what those people are thinking and doing. You know what I mean? So it's hard to sort of prove one thing and not the other. Just what your thoughts on it? What you think?
I personally don't understand. Obviously, I'm coming from a mixed race background, so it's a case of I can't for the life of me understand why someone would boo for what is effectively 5 seconds, before a game. There's no reason. There's no reason to boo. It's taken nothing out of your life, and if it's for a good cause, then you proceed with it. It's just for me, it's just mindless idiots. And I agree with you. I think once it comes back into stadiums, there will be a lot of booing across the board, and I just think then that's when it becomes us versus them kind of mentality. And I think it'll just get gradually worse to the point where the Premier League will probably bend and take it out of the game temporarily, and they'll probably bring it back in once a moment of racism occurs, which is obviously not what you want to do. You want preventative rather than, reactionary measures. But yeah.
You just said what the people, why do they do it? And I think that simple one, I wouldn't mind education. That's it. There's no other word for it. But just to sort of say something before we sort of move away from the subject. I do think the moment when there was a media blackout, I thought that was quite a big moment as well. Do you know what I mean? People saying that we've got to stop this, we've got to stop, because obviously there's. I saw something on BBC website as well. Scotland Yard are actually going out and finding people who put racist stuff on, and they're taking them to court. So there's actual, real, hardcore stuff being done now as well. And I think if we sort of look back to when we were younger, what was it, 30 years ago, you just have to take it. There's not a lot you want, we're going to report it to, nothing's going to happen. You just get on with it, you crack on with it. And I just think across the board, there's so much that's being done that's positive, but there's still
absolutely.
to be done, And I think we always look back and we think, right, that's brilliant, we've done. But we need. I don't think we can ever get to a point where we're saying everything's done, because until the end of time, until people of different colour, I always say this: when there's different people of different colours, racism will always exist. Because at some point, when someone loses an argument, it always comes personal. And the first thing you think, you look at someone, you see different skin colour, you think, right, well, I'll attack that. There's no thought behind it. It's just mindless.
Yeah, it's what's going to hurt them the most.
Yeah.
That's effectively what you jump on. Yeah, I always think that it comes down to how badly you want to not necessarily resolve the situation, because you can never, like you say, you never resolve racism. It's always going to be around. But, there are systems that governments put in places, like you said, the social media giants can put into places which minimize it. If you think of maybe 15, 20 years ago, you must have known quite a few people that smoke on a regular basis, but the government took a stand, like not necessarily took a stand, but they thought about, it's time to get a health kick. You'd see smoking adverts everywhere. Now it's to the point where I can't think of too many people who don't smoke. Like, it's more of a social thing. If I see anyone smoke these days, everybody's using vapes and what have you. And that's because it's being pushed to the nth degree. Now, this is the time where you think, right, is this no room for racism campaign? Is it going to slowly grind to a halt until we see the next incident, and then all of a sudden we're outraged again? Or is it where we double down and just go further?
The one moment, and it's weird how everything's happened during this COVID year, because everyone's a COVID season, everyone's sort of, it's like the whole world just sort of thought, these are your lessons, you've got a chance now to change shit, but we haven't. The moment I'm going to talk about is European Super League. We talk about an outrage and action and getting shit right. When the European Super League, I remember it was released on a Sunday, the amount of outrage from Sky, BBC, everyone, and then the government got involved, the fans got involved, UEFA got involved, governing bodies got involved. It literally got shut down in 2 days. 2 days, bang, done. Right. And the reason why that was because people were going to get hit hard by money, and billions of money, billions of pounds. That's your Sky losing this shit because the European Super League will go fuck off. So UEFA losing all their big players, Premier League losing their players. So all these big entities were just going to lose their biggest assets. Now, where the fuck was the same outrage when people were taking a knee? It's like, oh, they're taking a knee, they're all right, they look after themselves. You're talking about this, social media. I know I'm talking about it again, but the social media and those fans, I won't call them fans, they're racists who are out, just sending horrific messages to people of colour. And just across the board, racism. But like, where's the government there? Where's everyone there? It's almost like it's okay as long as we sort of just say something and we just put a message out to say, oh, we detest what's heard. We absolutely hate what's just been said. We can't stand it. This totally doesn't align with our philosophy and how we believe, everything should be done. We're going to ban this fat fan for life. And it's all like meaningless shit because it doesn't cost them anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're totally bang on. Like, there wasn't a single person that was pro the ESL. Yeah, there wasn't a single person that was pro. everybody was anti, everybody was up against it, everybody was tweeting, everybody was marching, you know, United fans going crazy. But like you say, racism is far worse than what was about to occur. Far, far worse. You know, the people that have been subjected to it over the years. Yet there are still people that oppose it. Like, there are still people that don't want to fight for that, and that's the hard thing to take. You know.
Yeah.
But
No, I think you've said that a lot better, because I always think when it's, because obviously he says a subject when you get emotionally involved with, it's hard to sometimes explain what you said, but you've just you're absolutely, what you've said, just what I wanted to say. I think you said it really well.
just a quick question. What more do you think the likes of Sky, BT could do on this? You know, obviously they've got their respective campaigns. You know, they obviously have the banners come up before the game. Do you think it's more about calling people out, calling clubs out? What more do you think they could be doing?
Right. I mean, credit where credit's due. The fact they're doing campaigns, brilliant, but it's just that, it's a campaign. How many campaigns have we seen over the years? I'm going to name Kick It Out. How long have they been going, and what the fuck do they do? I'd have to really question that. I mean, I've worked with them as well, and I just think, what do you really do? It still exists. I mean, the worst thing about the Kick It Out is, you know, like we know when the FA, Greg Clark said those racist stuff. I mean, if Greg Clark was racist during the whole Black Lives, you know, it's just, you just forgot about that. That was banging. We've obviously podcast on that. So talking about Kick It Out, they don't want to call the FA out because they get funded by the FA. You know what I mean? It just, the whole thing's just an absolute mess, and that's why I think we talk. Graham Neville's talking about this independent regulatory body, and I absolutely agree, because I genuinely don't think some of these governing bodies are fit for purpose. The fact you can fine someone, you know, half, you know, not even half, a tenth of what you'd fine. So if you're racist, you'll get, you know, a slap on the wrist effectively. Yeah. You know, if you're going to put a Paddy Power shorts on in the Euros, you know, UEFA will absolutely nail you. It's again money and priorities. You know what I mean? It's copyright. It's money. That's all it is. And you can put people. You know, you can talk about campaigns, and I just don't buy it. You know what I mean? Someone else, you might want to buy it. I'm sure it looks beautiful and great when they're putting it together, and they've got their board meeting and everyone's around the table and they're putting out these ideas, and it sounds amazing. But the crux of it is, your average Joe who's on the street, a person of colour, they're gonna, you know, how's he gonna feel? It's not going to make a difference to them. So you think, asking me how you change it, the only way you'll ever change it is, let's be honest. There's a small minority. It's not everyone, but that small minority. When you put in, you know, I don't know. So you've got a town of 20,000. Even if you say, you know, 1%, that's still 200 people. Do you know what I mean? So that small minority is still a lot. So it's, how do you target and tackle those people that are racist and have got no intention of changing, because it's the way they're brought up and they think it's cool and the environment they're living in. And it's education, but education's tough because not everyone really wants to turn up and learn it. They'll turn up on the course just to get, you know, not to get fined. But I don't know. I always think it's a funny question. You're always asking someone who's been, you know, when someone's been racially abused, it's like asking them what's the answer, or they ask as soon as you know, when the George Floyd was murdered. I remember they were getting every black footballer and asking him. I'm like, why are you asking him? What the fuck's all that about? Why is he responsible?
I think that was
every black person going. It's just, I don't get it. Well, I get it.
I think that was Will Zaha's point. A lot of it, he was like, you know, why are you using me for this specific campaign? But yeah, you're right. Education, obviously, that's the biggest thing. You know, a lot of the government will throw equal opportunities in the faces of people, and a lot of the time that rubs up a lot of people the wrong way. The argument always being most qualified person, etc., etc. But educational programs, that's the way forward, because, you know, regardless of what anyone thinks, racism hasn't got worse. It'll continue to get better the more awareness that's being brought towards it. But lastly, I just want to touch on the clubs and specifically what they can do about it. Obviously, we talked about the harshest of punishments that you can basically give people. I was just wondering, it is a minority of the audience that are doing it. Is it a case of banning them? Is it a case of perhaps if you're out of control? Obviously, we don't want to censor the crowd when they're booing. Let's say that we continue to take the knee and people boo. You don't want to censor people, but in reality, is it a case of fining clubs? Is it docking points? Is something like that? You know, thinking in framework.
They've got to be hit where it hurts. I mean, UEFA have got to take a massive look at them, look at themselves. The amount of times, and it's happened so many times over the last 20, well, probably longer, where England go to a game, any team go to a game with a black player or a person of colour, and they'll get booed or they'll put like Nazi signs or something, and UEFA will pick them with a ridiculous fine. I just want to go back to your point about what football, what clubs can do. Now, I should have probably said at the start, but it's really important to understand. I'd imagine most people know this. Football is just a reflection of society. So you got a fan in a normal life. He's not going to not be racist for 90 minutes because he's in a football ground. Okay. Now, the biggest thing that a club can do, or people, or anyone can do, is be anti-racist. Okay. So being anti-racist is standing up and not just because when you hear something racist, just because you don't say anything and you just sort of stand on the sidelines, that doesn't mean you're doing anything good. When you're quiet, you're on the side of the oppressor. It's just history. That's just the way it is. So you've got to stand up and be brave. Now, being brave, that's the tough bit. Okay, so when someone says something offensive, you're going to have to stand up probably on your own and say that's wrong and call that person out. Okay, that's just a small part of it. Now, clubs need to do that themselves, and you're talking about people booing for Black Lives Matter. I'd go as far as saying, right, okay, the kneeling is an anti-racist sign that we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to do that before every game. If you boo that, you'll be removed from the ground and you'll be banned for the rest of your life. Okay, so clubs need to be clear on that. If they want clarity, if they want to do something really positive and go, bang, this is what we're going to do, absolutely do it. Okay. But don't do some fucking half-assed measures where people sort of don't know if it's a grey area or Les Ferdinand's pulled out, Zaha's pulled out. So half the people are standing up, half the people are sitting down. Do you know what I mean? It's like, make it clear, decide what you're going to do and stick to it, and then punish people what they deserve to get punished. Because that's what it is. I mean, even if you punish them, they might still continue to be racist, but what else can you do? If ultimately it comes down to that racist person, that person's ideology, you've got to change it.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end it. That's a cracking idea. Just make sure that everybody knows the clarity of the situation. If you boo, you're out. That's it. It can't be any more clearer than that.
And we're talking about fines. If anyone's racist, that's got to be the highest, most expensive fine, points, deductions, the lot. So clubs are absolutely clear, because I think clubs at the moment they're more worried about the top six leaving for the European Super League than they are finding a couple of racist fans in their season ticket holders. You know what I mean? What's going to cost them more money? So it's priorities as well. The question of the day probably would be: do you think clubs? I'd say football. Do you think football is doing enough to tackle racism, especially after the sort of kick up the backside it's had over the last year? Anything from you, Chris?
No, I think it's been absolutely spot on. Obviously, like you say, if you can be brave, keep yourself safe, obviously. But I for one want to continue with the kneeling. I think, like you say, if it's just for one kid to take notice, to grow up asking the questions and telling their mates about it, and all being as one, as cheesy as it sounds, we're all the same. So anything from you?
No, I think you've summed it up really well. I think absolutely. I think we've got to just keep on the momentum, keep the movement going. And I think the one thing I would like to finish on, the social media giants they've got the biggest responsibility out of everyone. And they can do something. If they can't, I think it's time for government to step in. The government should be stepping in. If they can step in for European Super League, they can step in Instagram, blocking and banning and putting some sort of ID service on before you sign up for a social media profile, because otherwise John 23476 will continue to just be a racist cunt, such as life. But as always, guys, if you like what we're talking about, like, subscribe, give it that fancy jazz, and until next time, bye from me.
See you later, guys. See you later.